openings tonight, but because there's a couple of them, we'll probably wait till later, maybe after we've gone through motions. Before we proceed to public input, I'd just like to mention that we lost one of our friends again. Woody Herman had worked for the town from 1960 to 2006, 46 years. Although I didn't personally know him well, he was certainly well liked by everybody that did. And he was a friend to all and a heck of a worker. So we're going to miss Woody. And then we'll go to public input. Brian?
Good evening. I'm here to find out what the town of Wheatfield is, if they have any plans regarding spraying for mosquitoes this year.
We have money in the budget to be able to do one spraying, approximately one spraying. Nobody does general spraying unless there is an actual problem noted, if there is a health problem coming. And that's where we keep in touch with the county, and the county would tell us if spraying would be helpful. You remember about 2 years ago they did some spraying in the southern tier having to do with encephalitis. So if there is that kind of a health hazard, then we would do it. Other than that, it's pretty much a waste of time to spray once. You'll notice with Mosquito Joe, when he comes around, he's doing 6 and 7 sprayings a year because that's what it takes. Every time it rains, the spray's gone. So it isn't a practical application unless it's for health reasons.
Okay, well, my concern was they're not calling for the Zika virus in this area as of right now, but we don't know that. And obviously my biggest concern is my wife is 4 months pregnant, and that's a concern in our household. So that's why I'm here this evening to let you know that there are concerns.
I think we're all concerned. I think the state's concerned. I think that's where it would come from, is they would be telling us that it's moving this way, that there are problems coming this way. We don't have the facilities for doing the monitoring it takes to be able to find out if that virus is in this area. It doesn't look like the actual mosquito that carries the Zika virus is going to be coming above the Mason-Dixon line, but the disease could be, and that's what we have to keep our eyes open.
Sure. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes, Brian?
I just wanted to ask a question. In this past Friday's Tribune, there was a letter in there from Mr. Muscatello where he mentions the Town Center Focus Group. And in that, he says the Town Center Focus Group is dedicated to providing library services for residents. So, due to the results of the library survey revealing that residents were not interested in a town library, is this board still going to pursue a town library?
Well, the board really isn't pursuing a town library. We're in negotiations with North Tonawanda having to do with library services. There is a point at which having our own library services crisscrosses with the cost of doing business with North Tonawanda. And I think it's one of those things that we needed to have in the back of our minds as to where that cross is. We now know how much it would cost to run a library appropriate for Wheatfield. And we have to take that into account as we sit down with North Tonawanda.
Okay. And I'm going to ask again if you gentlemen could speak up when you talk out to us. After meetings, I get emails, phone calls, I get comments in back that there are many people in this room that are not hearing you. And I know a couple times I've asked, like the first 3 or 4 words out of your mouths, you speak up louder, and then you go right back down into a softer tone. So if you could just remember to speak up, because not everybody in the room is hearing you. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Joanne McGrew. I used to live right up the road on Ward Road till my husband passed away. And due to the fact that his son sold the house, I had to move with my daughter. But at the present time, I'm vice president of the Seniors Club. For the past 2 years, I'm also the Wheatfield representative for the Council of Older Adults for the past 10 years. In fact, Monday I have to be in the falls to help set up for our spring conference. I go to all the COA meetings, which I've been doing for 10 years, to bring back reports and news for our seniors to help us in our membership. And why I'm standing here is years ago, the bylaws said that when you're a senior and live in the town of Wheatfield, if you move, you're still considered a senior of the Wheatfield group. So in the last 8 years since my husband's died, I still continue to come. And I continue to work to make our club a good club, and it is a good club. The town puts on dinners with dances, which are very, very nice. And it's very unclear to me who pays $10 and who voted in that they'd have to pay $10 to come. I understand from Mr. Cliff that one of the reasons was that there were many people coming, and I agree full-heartedly, which were riffraff, which he quoted, that were coming from Buffalo, Niagara Falls, because it is put in the paper. So when I talked to Mr. Cliff at the dance before this past one, I said, Mr. Cliff, being that I've put in so much time and I worked very hard, do I have to pay the $10? My other half, who I live with, or he lives with me, he pays, which is more than proper. And the dance before that, when I did go to him, there were 3 or 4 that come in because somebody thought they knew them. And they didn't have to pay, but I did pay. So when I come in this Friday, or this Saturday, excuse me, I was told by Jean Marshall that I had to pay again, that my name was put on the list. So I asked Mr. Cliff what was going on. He proceeded to walk toward the kitchen, and I followed him. When we went to the kitchen, Gail was there, who was our secretary, and Mike was our rec director. They asked them, and they said, you don't live here anymore, so you have to pay. I said, well, why was I told I didn't have to pay? Mr. Cliff informed me that it was up to the seniors. I immediately called Arlene and asked her. She said, it is not up to the seniors, it's up to the board of the town of Wheatfield. And the reason I'm here is to ascertain exactly if I have to pay, what the rules are, and who does it cover. I'd like an answer to that so I don't have to be found out in the middle of something.
I'd like an answer to that as well. What I have done so far is I have spoken with Arlene on the phone.
I did not know this.
Yeah, since.
Oh, okay.
That happened last night. I've spoken with Mike and I've emailed with Mike. I've talked to Kathy and I've emailed back and forth with Kathy. Kathy's looking to see if there was ever anything on the board minutes themselves regarding a policy. The surprise to me was the $20 for out-of-towners that are not with somebody. That was a real surprise to me. I think it was even a surprise to Mike. But
that was new to me, too.
So Mike is looking in his direction to see if it goes back to when Ed was still around. He doesn't remember this policy coming into play. And Kathy's looking on minutes, and we're going to do some work on it. And hopefully by the next dance we'll have a more clear policy.
May I ask you, when was this rule put in to pay the $10? It was after the grandfather clause where you're a member, you're always a member?
Well, I think it was 2010. Well, the grandfather clause, I think, has to do with the seniors themselves, correct? The seniors allow past members, past residents to stay in the seniors. And I doubt that that was ever brought into a policy of the board, but I don't think the board actually voted directly on a policy. We did put financial in place so we could get a somewhat of a handle on the dances from where they were before.
It's not the cost of the $10, it's just that I put in a lot of years.
I understand, and that's something we have to take a look at.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully we'll straighten it out, but I don't think it's gonna happen overnight, Joe.
I don't expect it to, but I hope you will look into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening.
Evening.
I just wanted to ask if there was any updates on Quasar, specifically, any response from Ag and Markets, any word from Judge Caruso? And then I wanted to ask, specifically Matt, you had requested a FOIL that I had requested in, January, the second meeting of January. I wanted to know if you'd heard back on that, and also, if you've received any additional documents, from the DEC from the February, spill.
We did, right after the spill, that FOIL was done, I think that you gave me, you requested us to look into. We did get a response a couple weeks ago. It was electronic via email, the way we normally do it, a tremendous amount of documents, which we have.
So I can follow the regular protocol that I've been following?
Yeah, you can follow,
Okay.
and we can turn those over. Additionally, immediately after the spill, besides the FOIL, a inquiry letter was done from the attorney's office from me to Quasar. A response was issued around April 7th, in which they apologizes for the delay of the inquiry, but also we had specific questions and requested specific information, and that was prepared, and we have that, so if you request that, certainly we can turn over a copy as well.
Sure, let me just ask though, there was the other FOIL that I requested prior to the spill, that was more information from the second spreading in Royalton from the DEC, so.
Yeah, we got a response on that as well.
Okay, all right, I'll reach out to you on that. And then on Ag and Markets and Judge Caruso?
And on that, the Judge Caruso matter, we have not had a verdict or a ruling from the judge yet. I haven't had, it's been a couple weeks since I talked to the attorney, Steve Ricca, that's handling it, but I spoke to him, he didn't have it. He, at this point, feels it's counterproductive for him to keep calling the court and sort of pestering them, so to speak.
Absolutely.
So,
I just want to try and get a heads up before we read it in the paper,
Yep,
you know, that kind of thing.
I have not received anything, and I've been emailing or calling him back and forth. I hope to be one of the first to know as soon as he gets anything.
Then call me. Ag and Markets, anything from them? Any correspondence, anything new?
No, we did have, and I think I mentioned several months ago, we did have a phone conference with Ag and Markets about what they were reviewing and or whether they were going to take any further action at this point. You know, we have heard nothing from them either.
Okay. All right. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
That's it? Anybody else before we move on? Okay, Kathy, for the record, Art Gerbeck is traveling on business, and the rest of the members are present. Gentlemen, we do have a set of minutes from the April 4th meeting. Do we wish to move those in for approval?
So moved.
Moved by Randy, second by Gil. Anything anybody sees that they would like to change? If not, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? One abstention, so it's 3-0 and 1. We have a bill payment. The bill payment is a total of $345,043.11. The voucher numbers are 2016-521 through 651. Does somebody wish to move those in for payment?
So moved.
Okay, I need a second. Second by Larry. Any bills anybody wishes to hold? If not, then all in favor of paying these bills signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That is approved. We'll move on to Highway. Paul?
Not much tonight, I just wanted to let everybody know, I think you should have got this in the mail. The county's doing hazardous drop-off in, North Tonawanda. Saturday, April 30th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. We got a call, make an appointment. What number here?
Actually, you can go on the website too.
It's on the web, well, I got the number 439-7250. I know people, we don't take hazardous materials at the highway garage anymore, we have nowhere to store them. Fortunately, somebody did drop off some this weekend, they decided that they were gonna drop them off, whether we take them or not. Chipper's out, I told everybody at the last meeting, we chip in town a little different than the way we used to. Used to be the day before your garbage pickup, now it doesn't work out. When we're busy, we can't get the route done. And then in the summertime, when things slow down, it takes me half a day, and I'm looking for something else in that other half a day to do. I'd rather have them do it the first half of the week and have a couple full days at the end of the week to put them somewhere else. So I mean, they start at one section of town, they cover the entire town. Your busier roads, mostly your state roads, you may see them drive by until I get a third guy for a follow truck, safety truck. Then roads may hold off a little bit. We're still gonna try to get them every week. We're still gonna try to get every house every week. But some weeks we get backed up. And in the course of the summertime, when we pave, take the chipper off the road. We need every guy we have to be able to take the on jobs like that. Besides that, anybody have any questions?
Have you heard anything from DOT as to whether they are gonna start working on the boulevard?
Yes, actually, I went to a meeting, I don't know if it was last week. They were supposed to start, what, the first week of April?
So they are starting soon.
It should be starting fairly soon.
For the benefit of anybody that's not aware, the Niagara Falls Boulevard is gonna be made 5 lanes wide from side road to just underneath where the railroad tracks are and the new bridge is at Stolting's machine. That is supposed to be started this year and finished next spring. Okay, anything for Paul?
Yeah, one thing. I heard on the news, it was another town, I don't remember whether it was Amherst or Cheektowaga. They were saying that the price of blacktop was coming down like from 150, or it was some large number per ton. Down, it was like being cut by a third.
No, they were lying to you when they told you that, but.
Well, it was on television.
Basically, $5, $6 a ton is what it's coming down.
Was that all?
That's it.
Okay.
It's still something though, it's better than going up.
Yeah.
But yeah, my 284 agreement, I just got the bid book last Thursday. So I haven't filed my 284 with you guys yet.
Is the county still gonna be having the paving equipment available?
Well, the county lost their top two guys. They're losing Kevin O'Brien, who's retired, and Mike Tracy, who's retired at the beginning of May. He did a lot of the schedule with getting the blacktop paver around. I just talked to him tonight, we were at a meeting before this one. He's still gonna try to get it going. He's training one of his, I believe it's one of his foremen, to try to work with them. Unfortunately, and I know a couple towns had to do it last year, they had to hire out. There is different, I'm working on getting some different companies now that will, hire out a paver to us with an operator on it. We do that only because their machine, they're familiar with it, and we get it going a lot faster. You know, we're used to the machines the county has. If that happens, I'll have to get three prices and let you know it. Last year, I think town of Niagara did about $1,500 a day less paver. I'm hoping we don't have to do that. We got lucky last year. The county worked with me very well, and we were able to get the paver actually back to the end of the year. We finalized some of our jobs. I have a preliminary list. You guys would like to know what I want to pay, or just want to wait for the 284 agreement, I can do that.
As long as it's not getting in the way of anything, I think we can wait for the agreement. It shouldn't stop you from proceeding if you have work to do. Anybody else for Paul? Okay, thank you. Water sewer, Rich?
I have nothing to.
Anything for Rich? I think one of your bids is being opened tonight, right? That's one of the ones we're gonna look at. Mike, Recreation.
Couple of things tonight. We have some activity in the park. Paulie dropped off some millings, and we have our park improvement project underway. Started about 2 weeks ago. The bathhouse foundation is in. They're roughing the plumbing out now. The stone is there. So I assume that would be next, and then they're going to go on to the pathway, which 3 to 4 weeks is what I was told, with a target end date of Memorial Day. They didn't get started right away when they wanted to because of the weather, so I would say they're probably a couple weeks behind, but that is going to happen soon. We're really excited about that. And just one other thing, we did get on our diamonds today. We did get out and cut some grass around here. Those are kind of our two priorities right now, the diamonds and kind of the landscaping around here. Be patient. You know, we have cul-de-sacs in the Legion, cemeteries, in the con. Grass is growing, we understand. Shorthanded right now. I got one coming next week, hopefully more to come, and we'll get it done. But we're going to work on the flower beds out front, get them turned over, mulched. Paulie, Skip, thank you for the mulch today, but we'll get her done. I think that's all I got. Oh, and the senior dance, I have a list of people I need to thank. Supervisor Cliff, Galen Bob Connery, Jerry Dickerson, Chris Sauls and his son Clark, Debbie Reed, Mike Reed, Sarah Reed, Chris and Debbie, they donated the centerpieces for the tables from the Summit Park Pharmacy. It's a really cool thing they did for us to help them volunteer and serve food. Who else? Debbie Pangrazi, did I do that right, Arlene? Do you know her last name? Sounds like it? All right, cool. And then, who else? Oh yeah, my 4-year-old son Jackson, my wife April. And we had a good time. The weather was perfect. Perfect enough to get me out of like 4 hours of yard work. And that's pretty much all I got.
Okay, thank you. Anything for Mike? Thank you, Mike. Mike Clark. Other Mike. I see that Gateway looks like or whatever they call themselves these days, has started pizza logs. That's yeah, there's also a building that went up on Corey Drive, right? First of three? And those are rental buildings. Okay, anything for Mike? Are we going to be able to do anything with zombie houses? Matt had talked about things. I guess we're up over 40 of them now. Is there really anything we can do? Yeah, they are a bit of an eyesore in some places.
I think the Buffalo News today had something in there about zombie houses, and I don't remember what town it was, but it sounded like they were trying to give them tax incentives to take the houses over, figuring that maybe zombie houses need a lot of repairs, and maybe they were giving them tax incentives to buy materials tax-free. I didn't read the whole article in time to get here for the meeting tonight, but it looked like they were doing something. Anybody else read that?
I haven't seen it. We should get our hands on that. Maybe there is something we can do. Bridget? All right, very good. Your annual talk. What's going to happen with the STAR incentive checks? The 2% tax cap checks. That's a surprise. Jeez. Okay. Thanks for all the great news. Anything for Bridget? Arlene, seniors. Excellent. Sounds good. I think you missed your first dance the other day. Well, that's good. Thank you. Okay, anything for Arlene? Tim, you're up.
Thank you. The first thing we have on our agenda this evening is our planning board report. Due to the change in schedules of the town board meeting, we've only had one planning board meeting since our last board meeting, so we only have one to go through for you this evening, and that was on April 6th. The first item on that agenda is a temporary special use permit for Sure. The applicant requests their 8th renewal of a temporary special use permit to stable 3 horses at 3990 Hill Road. The planning board scheduled a public hearing for April 20th, 2016 at 7:05 p.m. No other action was taken. The next item was a site plan for a cell tower installation. The applicant proposes to construct a new cell tower on part of the 145-acre parcel located at 6571 Shawnee Road. Since the last submittal in December 16th of 2015, the site plan has changed. The cell tower is now proposed to be 160 feet tall. It was previously 195 feet tall, and has a 4-foot-tall lightning rod for a total height of 164 feet. The location was also moved approximately 45 feet to the east of the previous location, so that the existing vegetation that was there will help screen the lower part of the facility. The applicant was advised of several items and issues to review prior to their next submittal, and they were also advised of their approval process, which includes a coordinated review under seeker, a public hearing, a variance from the ZBA, and then a special use permit and site plan approval from the planning board. The planning board declared lead agency status and moved to begin a coordinated review under seeker once the revised site plan showing the revised tower location and the fall zone is received. No other action was taken. The next item was a site plan for Gugino. The applicant proposes to construct a 10,000 square foot multi-tenant building on a 2.14 acre lot located at 6421 Walmore Road. The building will house a collision and paint shop and will have remaining space for other commercial tenants with compatible uses. The eaves of the building will be 16 feet high, and the peak will be approximately 24 feet high. An exhaust stack from a painting area, which requires an air permit from the DEC, could also rise an additional 2 feet above the peak. That's going to depend on where the location of that stack ends up being. The applicant was advised of items to review prior to their next submittal, which included a coordination with the NFTA and FAA due to their proximity to the airport. They're basically right across the street from the end of the runway. A special use permit will also be required for the collision shop. The planning board declared lead agency status and began a coordinated review under seeker on that project as well. No other action was taken. The last item on that agenda was a site plan for the Niagara International Sports and Entertainment Complex. We've talked about this one before. The applicant proposes to construct 2 96,000 square foot air-supported structures, I've been calling them domes, for the multi-purpose sports fields, and that's to be located on the eastern side of the Summit Park Mall. The 2 proposed domes will be 75 feet high and will be connected to the main building by a small masonry structure. The development still anticipates having 12 full-time employees initially, with 30 to 40 part-time positions as the complex develops. The applicant was advised of things that remained outstanding, including a revised approval from the FAA, new height variances for the twin domes, and the inclusion of comments from the Fire Advisory Board and Engineering Review. A negative declaration under seeker was issued, but no other action was taken on that site plan that evening. And that is a summary of the minutes from our April 6th meeting. Any questions?
Can you update us on your, not on this, on the fencing proposal that you're working on? You and I talked briefly about
Sure.
For Nash Road for the landfill.
Right. We, since our last meeting, have received the survey that was done by McIntosh for the landfill site, and we've used that to develop a preferred layout for the fence. What we've looked at is avoiding some of the other utilities that are going through the one side of the landfill. It includes a brine line and the gas line and one other line that's going through there. So our next steps are to send that alignment to National Fuel to get their concurrence. I've already spoken with them once. They're preferring to stay away from all these other utilities. But that'll also be sent to the DEC. So what we're waiting for now is their concurrence with the fence location to make sure there isn't anything that's outside of those limits that needs to be inside those limits. So after we get their concurrence, we will be submitting a joint application to the Army Corps because there are potential wetlands around the site. And even though we're just driving fence posts into the ground, we have to make sure we have our bases covered with that. So those are our next steps.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The only other item we have on our agenda, I think, is one of your next motions that's up, and that is to schedule a public information meeting to go through our draft annual stormwater report for 2015. It's basically where we go through and talk about the things that we're covering in that report, which is due on the 1st of June to the DEC every year. We talk about the number of outfalls that are inspected and any work that was done by Ron Stevens and the Highway Department throughout the course of 2015 reporting months. So other than that, unless there are any questions, I'm done.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to schedule the public hearing for May 2nd, and we can call it 7:15 p.m. to review the draft annual report. But I do need a second to go ahead.
I'll second.
Seconded by Randy. Anything on the question? 15 minutes should be enough.
Yes, sir.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so you have your time and date.
Thank you.
Matt, I guess we go into regular motions?
Okay. First motion I have is a motion to pay Wild Critters for Wildlife Control Services rendered in 2015 and for the upcoming year of 2016 at agreed price of $1,000 per year as per past practice.
Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Moved by Larry, second by Gil. Anything on the question? These basically are volunteers who do a great job for us. If you have a problem, they're happy to talk to you. They'll come to your house and work with you on skunks or other wildlife that you have a problem with, and they've been quite helpful. Anything else? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's approved.
Next motion is the State Environmental Quality Review Resolution, a negative declaration. Name of the action is the Culvert Replacement Project, Lemke Drive and Eric Road. Whereas the town of Wheatfield is proposing to replace existing drainage structures on Lemke Drive and Eric Road, the project, and whereas the town of Wheatfield Town Board, the board has declared lead agency status with respect to the project, and whereas the board has reviewed the project, including the environmental assessment form, engineering analysis, and all other materials submitted in connection with this proposed action, and whereas the board has taken a hard look at all potentially adverse environmental impacts pursuant to seeker, now therefore be it resolved by the board that based on the board's thorough and careful review of the project, the board hereby determines the project will not result in any significant environmental impacts and hereby issues a negative declaration for the project pursuant to seeker. The reasons supporting this determination are documented on Part 3 of the short environmental assessment form, and is further resolved that the town supervisor on behalf of the town is authorized to sign and execute the Part 3 determination of the significant environmental assessment form indicating said negative declaration.
So moved.
Okay, we have motion by Gil. We need a second.
Second.
Second by Larry. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's approved.
The next motion is from Wendell Engineers and Town Attorney Office. It is in the packet. It's of significant length. It is, so I will do it as presented, but it is with regard to a proposed, adopting a local law entitled Amendment to the Code of the Town of Wheatfield, placing a 6-month moratorium on ground-mounted solar panel and solar farm installations within the town. And this is with regard to establishing a date for a public hearing with regard to that moratorium.
This is coming out of a brand-new group that's being run by Dave Sales, who's here today. If anybody wishes to join that energy group, we're looking for help. We're looking for volunteers. Basically, we have no law when it comes to solar power. We have nothing on the books and no controls of any kind. And we think that that's not really appropriate. There's an awful lot of rumors out there. There's a lot of phone calls that we as individuals are getting, and certainly businesses and farmers are getting. And we'd like to find out what is appropriate for Wheatfield, allow the board to do that. And it starts with volunteers. If anybody wishes to volunteer, you could see me, you could see Richard Muscatello, or you could see Dave directly yourself, or Kathy, and I'm sure we can all get a hold of them. So with that in mind, I'd like to make the motion to initiate the moratorium so that we can get some rules on the books before we're inundated. I need a second to proceed.
Well, we would need for it to schedule the public hearing on it, so we need to pick a date.
Yeah, we want to go as fast as we reasonably can, I think. But we have to give people the opportunity of being here. Can we do that in 2 weeks, Kath, or does it have to be 4? For a public hearing on a moratorium.
Local law.
So
Yes,
what is,
can we get it in this week?
And you have one at 7:15. Do you want this at 7 or 6:45?
I think we can leave it at 7, if it becomes controversial. May 2nd at 7 o'clock p.m.
Oh, there's one at 7 too?
Oh, that'll take some time, too. What's the next one? May 2nd would be May 16th?
If you want to put it off, I mean, in the language for this proposed moratorium, I have put the date of today, April 18th, as a grandfather date. So anything after, now that we schedule it, would be encompassed in the moratorium if the moratorium local law gets passed. So therefore, you're covered in the meantime. So if you want to put it out for the 16th, we should have
Okay, then I'll,
protection.
in the motion, I'll say May 16th at 7 o'clock p.m. I do need a second to proceed. Second by Larry. We're not trying to stop anybody. Nothing in the motion stops you from putting solar on your roof, on your barn roof, on your a sunroof. These are for standalone units or solar farms, if you would, large farms. We think we need to get some rules in place. Anything further on the question, gentlemen? If not, then all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's approved. Next, Vincent? Yes.
And I believe on this, there's a representative of the applicant here. This is a motion, whereas Vincent Properties, Inc., a not-for-profit corporation and tax-exempt charitable organization under Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, as amended, is planning to acquire property and develop plans in furtherance of the proposed approximate 60 units of senior housing on Forest Parkway, being a part of tax parcel map number 177.03-1-81.1 in the town of Wheatfield, County of Niagara, and state of New York. And whereas Vincent Properties, Inc. has submitted a request to the town board for its support of a custom payment in lieu of taxes pilot agreement for such development, and whereas Vincent Properties, Inc., by virtue of the proposed pilot agreement, has indicated that all special assessment districts will be paid in addition to the pilot program, and Vincent Properties, Inc., in response to the town board's request for additional monies to be allocated for fire protection, agrees the original pilot would be modified to increase the first-year amount from $12,000 to $14,000, increasing annually at a previously agreed to 2% annual increase. And whereas the town board has carefully reviewed the information provided by Vincent Properties and considered the financial impact upon the town and its taxpayers, now therefore be it resolved that the town of Wheatfield would consent to entering into a payment in lieu of tax agreement with Vincent Properties in substantially the same form as presented at this meeting, together with the increased first-year amount of $14,000 and increasing 2% annually thereafter, and attached to this resolution as Exhibit E, subject to final review by the town attorney and town assessor.
This is the attorney.
The attorney, I think, is here.
Good evening.
You want to come to the microphone?
Good evening. Michael Piat from Bond, Chenick and King on behalf of the applicant Vincent Properties. After our last meeting, I went back to the client, discussed with them the issues raised at that meeting and whether they could increase the amount that they would be willing to pay under the pilot agreement. They agreed to increase that from $12,000 to $14,000 per year, plus the 2% annual increase as described in the resolution.
And you came back with, instead of $2,000 for each of 5 fire companies, you came back with a $2,000 additional to the 12 that was there.
Correct. 2,000 total, and in the discretion of the board to divide it amongst the fire district, fire departments as the board sees fit.
Which would be $400 per fire hall. Basically, we have 5 fire halls.
Yeah, that part of it's up to the board to divide. You may want to decide that you want to allocate it to the fire district that's closest to this development, but that's up to the board.
I know the person, just from looking his name up on the internet, owns numerous of these type of businesses, and there's a chance you're coming in for another one on Williams and River Road. I don't think they understand what the fire halls do for them. At $400 a fire hall, I think you'd be better off keeping the $400 and not using the fire hall. You guys pick the people off the floor all the time for you, risk their backs and everything. They're there all the time. $400's not even going to hardly give them a month's worth of supplies for running to your place. It just, my feeling, it was a little bit of a slap in the face, $400 a fire hall. It's not much money to our fire halls, in addition to what they do.
Well, note that this is in addition to the special district taxes that are charged for fire services. So it's in addition to what would normally be required.
You know, when you think about it, there's a lot of residents here in the Wheatfield that care for their parents, their brothers, siblings, other people, and they don't have a lot of money. It'd be nice if they could come in and maybe pay, in relation to what you're offering, 58 cents or something to the town and get so they don't have to pay county and school tax. Because to me, that's about what it equates to.
Anybody, anything else?
Good question. This motion only says 2% a year. Doesn't say how long it runs.
It runs for the term. And,
I don't see the term listed.
in the prior resolution that started this last month, it's a 30-year term.
Okay. So what happens on the 31st year?
Then whatever assessment would apply to the property would apply. The reason I want to be careful about that is because with your normal pilot at the end of the term, the property goes back on the tax rolls fully. And this may go back in the tax rolls fully, but I guess it's similar to any normal pilot. At the end of the pilot period, the property is entitled to whatever exemptions that it would otherwise be eligible for.
Now, in discussions at the planning board, this was noted as a skilled nursing type facility. I felt, if my terminology is wrong, I think the memory care was mentioned at one point in time. This is not just another senior apartment.
No, this is a memory care facility.
It doesn't say it in the motion. It might in the exhibit.
There's probably even a little more chance fire halls are gonna be there than if it was just senior living.
Probably, yeah. Okay, anything further, gentlemen?
30 years, does that stay for the property, or if they, at 29 years, sell it to somebody else, everything change again?
It stays with the property so long as it's used for that use.
Okay, so far I do not believe we have a motion, right, Kath? Does anybody wish to make this motion?
There's a question in the audience, Bob?
Scott?
I believe at the last meeting, we had the Fire Advisory Board, request policy regarding CPR. Is this, facility gonna do CPR before fire department gets there?
I discussed that with my client, and to the extent that they have CPR certified staff present at the time, and provided that there is no DNR order, do not resuscitate order in place, in the discretion of that CPR certified individual, they will perform CPR. But in any instance where they're performing CPR, or someone might be in need of CPR, whether there is a DNR or not, they will call the EMT.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Councilman Doucette for getting some healthy discussion on this. I'm not in the fire services, but believe you me, I've had several firemen talk to me. And it sounds like a lot of the assisted living facilities, some of them have, and I don't know what the machine's called, but they have a machine to pick up people when they fall. But not all of them do. And it seems kind of, I'm going to say, it sounds kind of silly that you would have a facility that you're working with folks that maybe do fall down and they can't get up. And you don't have, I don't know, will your facility have an apparatus that somebody falls, you can pick them up without calling on the fire services?
That wasn't a question asked last time we met.
Well,
It
it was one that was posed to me.
asked. It was asked. Do we assist them getting up? And my folks did respond that they assess the situation and if they can, with their staff, assist the person in getting up, they do. But they did not mention, nor was the question asked, they did not mention whether they have any equipment that helps them with that.
Otherwise, if they don't, say it's a couple small nurses on or something, and what do they do? How do they get them up?
I think under certain circumstances, they will call the EMT.
Call the good old fire halls, $400.
Is there a way for the fire halls to charge at all?
I wish there was.
I don't think they can. If an
They're not
ambulance,
exempt too.
You do need to keep in mind that there is a special assessment or an assessment for fire services that are charged and paid.
true. All right, we still don't have a motion. Does somebody wish to make this motion? Does anybody wish to make this motion?
Bob, if you wanted to make the motion, let's see where it goes from there.
I'll go ahead and make the motion then. Do we have a second?
I will second the motion for some additional discussion.
Okay, Larry, go ahead.
So we increased by $2,000. And from what I'm hearing from our attorneys and some email chains is that if we, as a town board, do not approve this tonight or in the future, what is your organization going to do?
Well, my expectation is they are a not-for-profit that is otherwise entitled to a full exemption, full tax exemption on that property. As a sign of good faith, they're making this proposal so that they would make pilot payments to the town in order to basically act as a good neighbor coming into the town. If the town prefers not to enter into the pilot agreement, That's the town's decision, but my expectation is that they would apply for their exemption.
What, some of the residents don't quite understand what pilots are, and I guess from a town's standpoint, you're paying all of our special districts, is that correct, Bridget? Everything that a business would pay special district-wise, these guys would be paying 100% of that, correct?
Correct.
And on top of that, the pilot is actually giving the town additional revenue. Am I reading that correct?
Yes, it's giving you pilot payments that you would not otherwise receive taxes from this entity because it's a tax-exempt entity.
I know the answers to most of these questions, but I'm just asking them because I want everyone to hear them.
Sure.
So then the school district and the county, any taxation that they would get, what would happen with both school district and county?
They are all on a pilot agreement on an exempt property because the town is the assessing district. The town grants the exemption, in this case because the law says it needs to. This is an entity that qualifies for an exemption. Once it's exempt, the property would be exempt from county taxes, any town taxes if there were any, and school taxes. Now, it doesn't grant an exemption from the special district taxes, which you've already mentioned.
Now, do you have all of your tax-exempt statuses and everything filed already? So this property, I think, is already in that.
It is not currently exempt because we don't own it. We're in the process of acquiring it. The entity is tax exempt, yes, and we would file that paperwork with either with the pilot agreement or with the exemption application at the time we applied for the tax exemption.
If I can ask, if I'm hearing you correctly, if we say no, the town's going to end up having the facility, and we're not going to have any tax whatsoever. If we say yes...
Well, we'll have special district taxes.
Well, but this isn't going to affect special district either way. If we say yes, then we'll get somewhere in the range of almost $500,000 over the 30 years.
I haven't added it up, but
approximately.
I'll take...
And that's of the money which we can determine whether that goes to school, to fire company, or somewhere else. Or to the county.
Yeah, I think the only limitation we've added since last time is that as to the 2,000 additional,
right,
you have to spend that 2,000.
So on the one hand, if we say no, we get nothing. If we say yes, we end up with roughly $500,000.
That would be, I would agree with that characterization.
Yeah, that's what Matt was telling us.
The way I sort of look at this, if you had they're gonna spend about $4 million on this project. If you had a manufacturing or something that did pay the taxes, our residents' school taxes and county taxes probably wouldn't go up the way they go up. Every year, our school tax goes up, our county tax goes up. We've got over 100 properties right now not paying taxes. I don't know how many of them that have things like he's asked, and if they all paid their fair share, our residents' taxes wouldn't be going up the way they are. The school would probably have enough money, so would the county. That's my view.
Okay, there... I think that's a great question for the gentleman. You sort of addressed that 2 weeks ago, but if you can again.
Well, my client feels a need to be a good corporate citizen. They realize that they have the right to a full exemption from taxes. Rather than just come in and take the full exemption, unlike other not-for-profits in the area, they felt that they could find a way in their budget to make these payments to the town as a good neighbor. Uh, Otherwise, they're entitled to that exemption. As to the mortgage tax, I'll answer that question as well. While they are getting a mortgage, they don't need the mortgage tax exemption through your normal pilot. They are separately mortgage tax exempt under a provision of the private housing finance law, so they don't need to get the mortgage tax exemption through the town. I think it could be a combination. I can't answer that completely.
Will you or are you getting any funding from the IDA for this facility?
No.
Are you?
No, it's largely funded by the state.
I guess I do have one other question. Why do facilities like this fall under tax exempt? Why do they go tax exempt as opposed to for profit? Are they all that way? Is this unusual?
I don't think they all have to be that way. This one is.
And one thing that I can add, because there was discussion and it was touched on, and I know the crowd indicated some favor or disfavor, the notion that a not-for-profit or charitable or it could be religious entity owns property is a state law. It's not a local law that would allow them to not have to pay property taxes otherwise. And this organization apparently is a not-for-profit organization. So the town is bound by state law. We cannot. It's not our doing that organization like this or other charitables don't pay the property taxes. They pay the special district fees, fire protection, lighting, but this board or any other town board or village or city board as well, they cannot affect the fact that state law says a corporate or entity of this type that's charitable doesn't have to pay the regular property taxes. It's a feature of the law, and we can't avoid that aspect of it.
I have another question following up on what Julie said. So you're not going to use this approval of you being a nice business and giving the town, like Supervisor Cliff said, $500,000 over 30 years as a tool or a vehicle to secure some other type of favor from somebody else?
Not to my knowledge, from discussions with my client. I mean, they may use the fact that they've done this, to present it as as I've said, being a good corporate citizen, but it doesn't help facilitate any other financing for them.
Before we vote, I just wanted to let folks know, if we vote no, we're missing out on $500,000 over 30 years. If we vote yes, if we vote no, we're going to miss out on that. If we vote yes, we get the $500,000, but it doesn't sound like there's a lot of risk. They're still not going to pay the school, and they're still not going to pay the county taxes, but the town benefits. Is there anybody else out there? Don't be bashful. If you have any other questions, ask them, because that's what we're here tonight for.
My point was the burden that these facilities like his are putting on our fire service. It's gonna cost the residents more and more. We're gonna have to give the fire halls more and more money.
Yeah,
Because they aren't gonna be able to keep up with it with their equipment.
Councilman Doucette had a long laundry list. And I don't know how many companies or businesses are on there, Gil? About 100?
125.
125. So we're getting, the system is presenting us with people in facilities and businesses that are tax exempt. It's putting us in a predicament, but the state and federal government are allowing these situations to come down to us, and maybe something's got to be changed up at the top for the future, but...
Our fire halls are up to 1,000 calls a year. Three fire calls a day. They're volunteers. They work jobs. How much more can they do? And with the equipment and everything that they have, it's going to cost more and more and more.
I'll vote yes for it, but I think our forefathers years ago, when they allocated this money from the town to the fire halls, were thinking about going to Niagara Road, picking up John Doe, not going 200 times a year to a private, so-called not-for-profit business. I think that's the problem we have with these 200 calls that are going. I'm not blaming it on you, I'm just saying, I don't think that was the intent of the money from the town that went to the fire hall, to have 80% of their calls at those places. But I
It's
will
like-
vote for it, because if we're gonna get $500,000, I think it sounds too good to be true. That's the part that scares me, but I
And
will
it's
vote for it.
like he said, they're gonna, just for an example, the lift in Patience, they're gonna evaluate them. And 9 out of 10 times, it's gonna be your neighbor, your next door neighbor, risking his back and arms and legs and everything else, picking these people up.
I said before, I think we should, at some point, look at putting a fee on these
Yeah.
places and putting a fee on them.
I know we have a new, our Councilman Gerbeck's not here tonight, but he started the fire advisory, and I know fire advisory oversees all the new subdivisions and buildings and businesses that come into town. You know, maybe that's something between the planning board and fire advisory, making sure that these places have whatever type of lift or apparatus they need to lift people. Maybe it's mandatory that they have one of those, and I understand that several of them don't. Yeah.
What's it called, Julie?
Named after who?
Name-
Oh, okay.
O-Y-E-R, okay. Thank you.
Councilman Howard, just one point to clarify. With regard to what's taken in on the pilot, the town board has the right to distribute that amongst the county and the school district as it sees fit. So those are payments in lieu of taxes, so they come into the town can parcel it out as it sees fit.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question from the floor. Let's allow that.
Originally, I asked him for 2,000 a fire hall, and that wasn't much. I thought that was very modest.
Let me just add, and to respond to that, at least from the legal aspect, and of course, those are valid points, how much does $2,000 or whatever cover, but on the other hand, as I said before, when something is dictated by the state that says, if they come in, we cannot charge any taxes. Right, well, we can't keep them out based on their status. That would be illegal. We can't keep them out based on their status. But what we can do is determine if they're willing to pay something, do we take something or do we take nothing? And I guess that's what's on the table now. And that was my point before. If the state dictates that this particular entity, based on its corporate status, doesn't have to pay taxes, the question is, do we decide, well, we're going to make a moral stand and say, well, we just won't take anything, as opposed to what might be too little. So there's a balance here of what a pilot can do to pay something, or you take nothing. And that's the point I was making before. What comes from the state, we may not always like what comes from above us.
They can probably afford it, Deb, but they don't have to afford it. And if we don't accept... Right, and I appreciate that. But if we say no and don't approve this, they're still gonna come in and it's not gonna get anything. So, that's the option. I don't believe that we can do that. I think that volunteer fire companies are limited as to what they can do, and charging for their services they cannot do. The tri-community ambulance can charge for the use of the ambulance service, especially if it's accident-related, they can charge the insurance companies. But Shawnee cannot. Shawnee's ambulance is a free ambulance service. They transport somebody to Buffalo, they do not charge for that service.
Scott had a question.
Go ahead.
It's not, unfortunately, they're in our fire district over there. And we're not there lifting we're there lifting all the time, but that's not the only time. Fire departments are there when the, sprinklers freeze and the place floods. We're out there sweeping the rooms out, cleaning the place out. People don't realize what the firemen are out there for. The fire service is getting old. Not getting the young members back into the firehouse, so it's putting a burden on us. So I just wanna make sure it's not just lifting the people up. We're there for closing water lines, and lifting people.
Burnt toast.
If the burnt toast gets to the alarm in the building, then they do get a call, yes. Okay. Any other questions? Normally, we would not go to the floor with questions at this point, but I think they're very appropriate. And the comments are very appropriate. Okay, gentlemen, we have a motion before us. We have a second. We've had plenty of discussion. I will call for a vote. All in favor of approving this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
So we are at 3-1. That is approved. So the pilot is approved. Thank you for coming and explaining your position.
Thank you for your consideration.
Okay, any more? There should be a couple more, right?
No, a couple more. All right, next motion is from, Parks and Recreation Department. Motion to hire following individuals: John Mulcahy, Alex Hake, Jacqueline Smolin, Lisa Demler, Kirsten Kletke, Nicholas DiCarlo, Alexis Eustace, Jamie Haggerty, Anthony Casale, Tess Walter, and Meredith Lance as summer seasonal help for the Parks and Recreation Department at rate of pay and job terms pursuant to job specifications for Parks and Recreational seasonal help, subject to approval of a human resource and Niagara County criminal background check.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Randy with the motion and Gil with second. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's approved.
Next motion is to approve the environmental forms designation of certifying officer forms and checklist forms for the New York State Community Development Block Grant Program and to authorize the town supervisor to execute same in favor of the previously approved NYS CDBG grant application in favor of Jacob's Ladder LLC.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Moved by Larry, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Randy. Anything on the question?
Just one point here. The LDC had a meeting last Monday. It was I guess you could call it our first organizational meeting of the year. We accepted our bylaws, our membership and board of directors. Several of the members needed training under the stipulations in the statute from the state. Board members have to be trained, and I think many of them in the last week have had training. There's training throughout the next couple of months here that we'll all be taking. What else did we cover, Bob?
We selected our attorney and talked a lot about this project.
So it looks like our LDC is close to being able to conduct business. We're not quite there yet, but my guess is within the next month or so, when we get some reports back from Jacob's Ladder on their grant exception, I think the LDC sounds like will be formed and able to act on any grant situations that come before us.
Okay, anybody else? If not, then all in favor of signing these documents signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that's approved. And you had a couple of new motions.
Yes, there were a couple late motion additions. They being, from the Highway Department, to accept the top bids received to sell surplus from the Highway Department to wit, A 1994 Ford Salter for $4,600, B, a 1987 auto car for $5,250, and C, a 1978 Freightliner for $2,575, all being top bids received for sale items from the prior authorized postings on Auctions International.
I'll make this motion. Need a second.
Second on the question?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, Larry, and go ahead.
Now, did all these bids meet or exceed your expectations?
A lot.
Yeah.
I could kind of tell by the smiles back there. Kind of unbelievable what you can sell stuff on Auctions International for, isn't it?
It's amazing.
I'm surprised the prices are so high, because scrap is down.
Now, this is our take. The Auctions International has already taken what piece of the pie they get?
No, then they charge a premium on top of that price to us buyers. Yeah,
So this is our money,
that's our money.
and the seller still had to pay, or the buyer still had to pay some additional fees.
Right.
Wow.
Anything further? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? You guys can go ahead and put that through. One more.
One more, and this is from GHD Engineers. Motion to allow issuance of bid documents in conjunction with the Lemke and Eric Road Culvert Replacement Project as prepared by GHD Engineers, and to establish a bid due date and bid opening date in connection with the Lemke and Eric Road Culvert Replacement Project, with said bids being due May 16th, 2016. It doesn't say it, but I believe they suggested at 4 p.m. And said bids being publicly opened and read aloud at the regular town board meeting at 7:30 p.m. on May 16th, 2016.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So move.
Second.
Moved by Randy, second by Gil. Do you accept the 4 o'clock p.m.? Randy?
Yes.
Gil?
Yes.
Okay, so 4 o'clock p.m. to be here, 7:30 p.m. to be opened that same evening. Anything on the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? That's approved. This is not the bidding process, it's just setting up a date when they have to be in. And I think that's it for regular motions, correct?
That's it for motions. One other thing was on the attorney item sheet that was requested, was a discussion of a request from St. Johnsburg Fire Company for the town to be responsible for the cost to install a control system for the light at Niagara Falls Boulevard and Ward Road, an approximate amount of $6,273. I don't know if anyone from the fire company is here, but...
Yeah, Skip's here.
Okay, but that was an item requested to at least be reviewed or discussed tonight.
Skip, can you explain to us how that would work?
What would work is, there's a little module that goes in each fire company, we have 5 fire departments. We'll shoot a signal to the traffic control light at Warden Boulevard, and then it will trigger the southbound, heading southbound on Ward Road green, and the other 3 intersections stay red. It's a very, very busy intersection, and it hasn't worked in years and years ago, and this is the cheapest way that we can trigger that whole town. But it would make it safe for the fire apparatus to go through that intersection. Last year, we went through about 45% of the calls just to go through that intersection. Knock on wood that nobody hit us. They hit us once, years and years ago. And after we started making us think about doing it. We had it working years and years ago, but I went down that road, and that road, I think it got wiped out. That road was shut down. So the state gave me 2 vendors that used to deal with this, and this is the best one that I came up with.
How does it get triggered?
Through the radio system.
Through the radio signal.
I got a
So it's not automatically triggered every time a call comes out, it's only when you want it to be triggered. Are there any other lights in town where we do that?
off the top of my head.
I I don't remember seeing anything like that.
Everybody here knows that Niagara Falls Boulevard is treacherous to traffic. Nobody stops, and it's just a big safety issue.
Skippy, you mentioned 5 trucks. Is this just for Johnsburg, or are we talking?
For the 5 fire trucks that from Johnsburg Holtz District.
Okay, I don't know if Burkholtz or any of the other districts come through that area that they would maybe benefit too. I don't know what.
Well, that's the obvious question we're gonna run into, and that's why we gotta talk about it. 'Cause what the fire company is asking for is, in addition to the money they get now under contract, is additional funding that we authorize this.
Correct, there's gonna be more, expenditure after I get the equipment in. I gotta hire an electrician to wire it into the box with the drive.
Yep.
I gotta hire somebody to mount them on the truck. And I gotta take the toy apparatus up to the county to program it so it works in the apparatus. So there's more expenditure than just what I presented to you today.
Paul, go ahead.
If you don't mind me saying something, you said we had one accident there, and I was in it. 20 years ago. We were lucky nobody was killed. We had a couple people seriously injured. A lady running a red light. The one thing you gotta remember about this intersection is, the boulevard has been widened, there's been turning lanes on all the other major intersections along the boulevard. This is the one that they've done nothing with, it's still on a bend, it's still blind spot. And we've talked about it how many times, I don't see the state coming out anytime soon to widen that part. I wish they would, but it's just something to take into consideration.
Well,
And that is the only major intersection on the boulevard that hasn't had some type of widening or straightening done to it.
Yeah, the state and the federal money that comes to the state is being used primarily for maintenance of existing facilities. It's not being used to do improvements, it's not being used to build new bridges, it's being used to fix bridges that have problems. And that's why we were taken off the list, the TIPS list, and we're still off the TIPS list for the rest of the boulevard at this point.
Could we ask them to pay for this project?
It would certainly delay it. If we ask them, it would certainly delay it. And I'm sure Skip would like to get it done this year.
Skip, you mentioned there used to be something there. I remember something that used to be there. Is it just broke, or?
It's just, the wire deteriorated over the years because it hasn't been used. I called Verizon, they don't want no part of it. I called Time Warner, they just keep passing the buck back to Verizon and vice versa. So nobody's giving me a clear answer of.
So the old method it sounds like it's irreparable. You can't fix it.
It's a 10-year warranty on the system after it goes up and it's operational.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that it's something that needs to be done. It's a question of how, is it our responsibility to add this to the budget? And that's the question.
Well, I don't wanna say
I think
I don't want to take it the wrong way. The fire company's gonna get sued, and also the county's gonna be dragged into a lawsuit too,
Yeah.
after our audit.
Right.
If there's an accident, somebody's gonna call each other, somebody gets killed. Knock on wood, that nobody did that time, but 5 people in it. You got people laying in the tire there, call each other, and see anything.
There's one guy right in Japan, spent 2 weeks in the hospital.
So it's just, I'm concerned about the safety of the fellow firemen that are going through that intersection.
Sure.
Or working elsewhere and somebody's trapped inside.
Well, they're driving in a big truck. The safety of the idiot that drives through the light in front of them is the one who's gonna be killed.
Attention to what's inside.
Go ahead, Julie. 6,500. $12.5, yeah. Yep. would agree. It's a question of how do we get there. Every company has wishes and every company wants more money. There's no question. Wait till you're up here. Okay, does anybody wish to take any action on this today? Or do we need some time to discuss this?
I think I'll make a motion to spend the money, and the reason, I don't feel like we're giving the money to the fire company. I think we're taking this money for the safety of the people in the area.
Well said.
So I know in principle it's going to the fire company, but I think it's for the safety of all the people around. So I will make the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Anything further on the question? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, Skip, that's approved. You can go ahead and place the order, and you'll probably have to do the ordering and then give us the bill when you're done, and we'll voucher it. Okay? I guess we're next. We talked about bid openings before. Kathy, are we prepared to open the bids? There are two separate bid openings. One is for okay, the canopies. We had talked about putting canopies up at the community center last year, as well as over at the youth center. The canopies at the community center are primarily for safety. The youth center is a little more for convenience when you're coming up to walk into the building from the sides, if I'm not mistaken. Is there a safety factor on those also?
There is, we only want
And the other bid has to do with sewer pump stations. What do you got, Ken?
The first is from Niagara Construction Company, and it's split into two. Do you want them separately or just combined?
Just quickly.
Combined, $51,800.
Yeah, there won't be any action taken on either of these bids tonight.
Separate. The first one, for construction of community center canopy A, $34,034. And for canopy B, $17,978.
Are these only the community center? This is just the community center? It's not counting the rec yet?
This one is from Mike Kelly Construction. Total bid is $52,500, which is $30,500 for canopy A and $22,000 for canopy B. Mulvey Construction. Total bid is $91,660. Canopy A is $69,598, and canopy B is $26,480. And this one is from D.R. Chamberlain Corp. Total is $62,310. Canopy A is $47,780, and canopy B is $25,830. That's it.
Okay.
Yep. Now, the proposal for rehabilitation of the town pump station at Jagow and Rebecca. This bid is from, our proposal from GHD. Total sum is $17,100.
And this is the engineering services leading to repairs, correct?
And the other is from Wendell. And this is for Jago. And that bid is $37,000. And the second one is proposal design of engineering for Clesson Drive Pump Station. GHD is at $29,900. And Wendell is at $14,200.
Interesting. So we'll have, probably Rich and probably Matt and anybody else that needs to be involved review these and possibly make a decision next board meeting. Thank you, Ken. Okay, board member items. Councilman Hellwig, anything?
I was able to look up that Buffalo News article on zombie houses. They're doing a few things, and it was in Batavia. They got special permission from the state to allow single-family houses to actually do improvements to the house. They still have to pay full taxes, but if they do improvements to the house that increase their tax value, that tax value improvement sounded like had a 25-year tax exemption. Does that sound reasonable, Bridget?
Well, you have a version, we have a version of that now, right? If you do improvements to a house, that your taxes go up gradually as opposed to one quick jump. So we do have a version of that now.
Received an email today. I haven't had much time to read through it because it just came through right before this meeting started, but the FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, hasn't approved anything, but they've given their schedule. They're going to issue their environmental assessment on July 27th for the pipeline project, and it looks like whatever a 90-day authorization decision deadline of October 25th. So it sounds like around October 25th they'll give their approval. And this was only in a 2.5-page document that came from FERC, and they specifically, well, they referenced the Pennsylvania piece of the project in Wheatfield, but they said that they're going to be removing an existing meter and odorizer station. So I've asked for clarification on where those two facilities are, because it's the first I heard that they were going to be removing something. So I guess more to come on that. I think that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Randy, anything?
Next Tuesday, agricultural focus group meeting. And the other thing is, I don't know what we can do. I'm going to have to send Robin an email. The four-wheelers driving through the farmers' fields yesterday. Tonight I come to the meeting and they're still going there. I saw them chasing them. I don't know if somehow, some way could ever put something. People are just buying four-wheelers, sending their kids across people's property, and it's really out of control. But I don't know what you can do, because the sheriffs just won't chase them down, and I don't know what can happen. But it's aggravating for a lot of people up at that end of town.
For sure.
That's all.
It's not only there that it's aggravating, it's actually unsafe when it comes to places like the Niagara Sanitation landfill, yet they're in there all the time. Gil, anything?
I have some correspondence from Burkle's Fire Company. They'd like to add Jim Kish Jr. to their active roster, and I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That's approved.
I also have correspondence from St. Johnsburg Volunteer Fire Company. They'd like to add Mark Cole as a firefighter and Dylan Mackler as a junior firefighter. And they'd like to remove Nick DiCarlo from the active roster and John Gulazowski. And I'll make that motion.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
And that's it.
approved. Thank you, Gil. I don't have much. I brought up a couple of things here that have already been mentioned. Senator Ort had sent to me a message about the hazardous waste pickup on April 30th. Kathy does have that in her office. If somebody needs the information, you can get it from Kathy. I think she also has it up on the website. Yeah, everybody has it, so. You don't get very many chances during the course of the year to dump off hazardous waste. This is a good chance. Electronics we do take, but other types of family hazardous waste, oils, chemicals, this is your opportunity. June 2nd, we're probably going to have a meeting over at the community center, and that would be a public information meeting, the next step in the rezoning, possible rezoning of Niagara Falls Boulevard. So you can start putting that date away. We did look at a couple possible dates. The other one wasn't as feasible, so that's a Thursday, if I remember right, June 2nd. There will be a lot more information and more mailings coming out on that issue. And that's all I have. Next meeting, May 2nd, we have the public hearing for the Conservation Cluster subdivision at 7. That's likely to take a little while. Needed. Brian, we'll go back to public input. Does anybody, yes, Paul?
I forgot what, we do have a drainage meeting coming up, April 25th.
Monday night?
7:30 p.m.
That's
Highway Garage.
yeah, that's a week from tonight.
Yeah.
Larry, do you want to once again announce when the Liberty Drive cleanup's going to be?
Right now, Dave Brandon is back from Uptown Stack 833. May 7th, Saturday morning, starting at 9 o'clock. Everyone meets at, Sunset Fire on the Way Drive.
I don't know if we can get enough crew there, David, but there's quite a mess on, what would it be, Jago Road, right by Deborah Drive. I don't know what happened there. Somebody must have lost some garbage, but it's all in the ditch. If there's any way we can get a crew over there, it might be worth doing. A little bit of garbage you can expect people to pick up off their own property, but that's quite a mess in that one spot. And I think that's probably it,
I
right?
have one.
Kathy, go ahead.
Last week I received a phone call from a resident, regarding Meals on Wheels. So I called the Office of the Aging, and in conversation with them, there are 13 people, families, seniors in Wheatfield who are currently on a waiting list to get meals. And the only thing that's preventing that is a lack of people to deliver the meals. So I'm trying to get some volunteers to deliver Meals on Wheels for just Wheatfield residents. So I'm in the process of getting information. You can call the Office of the Aging for Niagara County, or I will have information in my office within the next couple days. But people would deliver meals. You go and pick up the meals, and they're delivered between 11 and 1, and you can do it 1 day a week, 2 days a week, however many days that you sign up for. There is a stipend that's paid. I don't know what the details of that are, but anybody that you know that might be interested in helping our seniors get some meals would be appreciated. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I was surprised to hear that there were 13 people waiting, and the only thing is, yeah. Okay, thank you.
The county does a ride-along every year where we, public officials, have the opportunity of going on one of those ride-alongs. And the relationship that develops between the person who's driving a simple meal, a prepared meal, becomes very strong. And it becomes an important part of both lives. Yep. Yeah, these are primarily for people that can't get out and can't get their own. Thank you, Kev. Any public input? Brian? Yeah, that'll be nice. Gee, maybe we can do something over on Jago Road at the same time too. That one won't take very long. That'll probably be up and down in a week. But the Niagara Falls Boulevard, once they do that, you'll be down to half a lane or one lane each way for months at a time. It's going to be a mess. Okay, if there's no public input, then